What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel. Today we have a new deck list for you guys. We're gonna be going over Han Green, but as if he joined the Rebels. So it's gonna be more of a Rebel-centric build. It's a lot of fun. I think it has some good speed to it. Obviously, we're playing some things that aren't Rebels. We'll go over those as we get there. And then after we go over this deck list and the sideboard, I am gonna go ahead and show a budget list just to kind of give some options for obviously the expensive cards, because not everyone's going to be able to get the expensive cards of the deck. So then we're going to go ahead and show a similar type of build, but more on the budget friendly side. And then we're going to go ahead and hop into a matchup. We're going to go ahead and hop into the leader and the base here. And obviously, as we know, we have young Han. For an action, play a unit from your hand. It costs one less, do 1 damage to it. The reason why it works so well with Rebels is because a lot of the Rebels in this deck are going to be 3 or less costs. And being able to get them out kind of cheaper, you can get multiple out on turn 3. Maybe you can go ahead and start getting a lot of them out, and then you can start flooding the board and getting a ton of damage in on the base as fast as possible. You can also get out K2SO a turn early, which getting him out on turn 2 is actually really good. Even if they do end up killing it, they're still going to take 3 damage in the base, and most likely trading unless they're going ahead and using one of their events in hand and stuff like that, which they probably are going to do if they have the opportunity. But still, they're wasting a resource to get rid of K2SO early, and again, you still have other units that you can potentially put out as well. Obviously, if you flip him out, he comes out if you have 5 or more resources, which is pretty good. It's pretty good speed there. And then you can just do his action, so you don't have to exhaust him or anything, so you can do it multiple times in a turn. And this is where you can start getting a lot of your rebels out and just kind of flooding the board, right? So like if you have 3 resources left and you have Han on the board and you happen to have 3 battlefield marines out, you can go ahead and start playing them all for the cost of 1, but they're all going to come in as 3/1s, but still that's going to put a lot of pressure on your opponent to kind of deal with them as quickly as possible, right? The base, we are running Energy Conversion Lab, giving up that 5 HP to get ambush on a unit. This I save for a couple of units in this deck, and then we have other ways to get ambush on units, but Energy Conversion Lab is really good in this deck. Just make sure you can get on your maybe if you're using Poe, you can guarantee that you get his on attack ability. You can use it with K2SO, swing into something, overwhelm, then blow up, and Wrecker. Those are the 3 things that I kind of save Energy Conversion Lab for, just because like it can provide a lot of damage and really kind of get you into a good position at that point, right? So getting into the ground units, we have 25 ground units, and the whole point of this deck is to use the rebels early to get a ton of damage on your opponent, and then you're going to kind of go into the mid to late game with your K2SOs, your Poes, and Wrecker to kind of close out the game. But being able to use the rebels early on to get in as much damage as possible is what I really like about this deck. It adds that speed, and then you kind of close it out with the big units using the ambush from Energy Conversion Lab and other things, right? So let's go ahead and hop into the ground units. We start off with 2 Spec Force Soldier. Now, when played, a unit loses Sentinel. This is pretty good because sometimes Sentinel can get in the way. And you can use Han's ability to play this technically for free. It will die, but you still get the on-play ability, and you can go ahead and get rid of a Sentinel on the other side if you need to close out a game. So this won't cost any resources late game if you know you're playing against a deck with a bunch of Sentinels. So that's one of the things I like about it. Next, we have Battlefield Marine. We know it's a 3/3 2-drop, one of the staples. And again, with Han's ability, you can play when he's out there multiple of these for the cost of 1 if you have them in your hand. So still pretty solid card right there. Cassian Andor, one of the new cards. I love this card. Being able to play it from Smuggle, even for 5, it comes out ready. You can use it as a way to close out a game if they're right there. But also on turn 1, you can go ahead and use Han's ability, and then he's just basically a Battlefield Marine. So you have two technical Battlefield Marines in this deck, and it's really good. There aren't really many 1 or 2 drops in this deck, but there are other options to play your 3 drops on turn 1 and still have them last, even if they are playing Cad Bane or Darth Vader. And Cassian Andor is one of those cards to use, right? We have Echo Base Defender, gives you a Sentinel for protection, and then obviously on turn 1 you can play it out. It's a 4/1, but still, it's if you have the initiative and you're not playing against one of those decks, playing this out on turn 1 and getting a fast 4 hit on the base is pretty good. Fighters for Freedom, I have it as a 2 of. I really do like this card in the deck. We do play a lot of red cards, and especially red cards in our events that do damage to your opponents, so you're just going to be adding in that extra 1 damage. This is another one of those cards that you can play on turn 1, and it'll be a 3/2, so even if they are playing Cad Bane and Darth Vader and stuff like that, they're not gonna be able to take this out. If they use McClunky and get like Greedo back to hand using in Cad Bane, then it is what it is. But this is just a good card to be able to do a little bit of like chip damage while you're playing your other events, and I think that's why it fits pretty well in this deck. We have Fleet Lieutenant, a staple for Rebel decks. If you get this on turn 2, you can go ahead and hit for 5, or if you have the Echo-based Defender, you're hitting for 6 on turn 2, and so that's pretty good. That's what I like about Han. You can get the Echo-based Defender out early. Fleet Lieutenant, smack the base for big damage. Next, we have K2SO. As we know, this card is a monster. It has Overwhelm. It is a 4/4. You can play it out for 3. It'll be a 4/2, but still, for each opponent, choose one, either deal 3 damage to that player's base or have that player discard a card from the hand. Now, discarding a card from hand is actually pretty solid at times, but being able to get in that 3 damage at any point when it dies is also really good. It makes your opponent, they have to take this out at any point whenever it comes in because it can do a ton of damage. Being able to swing in something with Overwhelm and then deal an extra 3 damage into the base is just really good. So your opponent has to kind of take this out and just eat the 3 damage to the chin, but still, it's just really good. It makes your opponent have to deal with it as soon as possible and give up their resources to deal with it, and then it kind of leaves your other things kind of open, right? But still, K2SO, very, very good. One of the best red heroic cards in the game, for sure. We have Poe Dameron. Speaking of one of the best heroic red cards, Poe Dameron is so good. One of the targets for ECL, because on play, you get to discard up to 3 cards and then choose the abilities, right? You're dealing 2 damage something, defeating an upgrade, which is very key in this current state of the game, right? Because there are a ton of upgrades that are very dangerous, like the Darksaber on Sabine. Sometimes Boba Fett Yellow running that Boba Fett's armor. If your opponent's putting bounties on your guys, you can go ahead and blow up those bounties. Entrench, you can blow that up. Frozen and Carbonite, I'm seeing a lot of, and you can blow that up as well. So this is a good way to kind of free up your units if they're being slowed down by Entrench and Frozen and Carbonite, or if your opponent is getting a bunch of upgrades on their guys, at least try to slow them down like the Darksaber and maybe Boba Fett's armor, stuff like that. So very, very good card. Also, 5 cost 6/6. Being able to play this for 4 is extremely, extremely strong. And then next we have Wrecker. Now, Wrecker, you are using Energy Conversion Lab, you're bringing out Wrecker, you are blowing up a resource, dealing damage. So there are multiple games where I close out a game because I go ahead and use Energy Conversion Lab with Wrecker. I blow up a resource, deal 5 damage, and then I do the Overwhelm damage on top of that. So I like to try to use the blowing up of the resource to leave that guy on 1. So then I can go ahead and swing into it and deal 6 damage into their base. And it's just a quick swing of 6 damage because they won't really see it coming. Well, they might see it coming because you know that Wrecker is going to be in a deck like this. But still, being able to deal that 6 Overwhelm damage is just really strong at any given point using Energy Conversion Lab. And it's one of the ways to close out the game. And it's why I play Wrecker in the deck, obviously. But obviously, Wrecker and Poe Dameron are not Rebels. So they're kind of like the end games like that. And then, but again, you're using your Rebels to kind of start off a lot of damage into your opponent's base as quickly as possible. And then kind of closing it out with Poe Dameron and especially Wrecker with ambush and stuff like that. So I think that this deck starts out of the gate really, really well. And even against control, there are other options to kind of go, even if they're taking out your units as you kind of go along. I haven't had extreme difficulty with control. Iden Double Blue obviously is still probably the premier control deck. And yes, it can get to the point where you cannot finish it off and you might lose to it. But I think that this deck does have good chances to kind of deal with control as quickly as possible because of the speed of the other units to be able to get them out kind of early. Even if they're using Power of the Dark Side, you can get multiple units out quicker because on turn 2 you can get a Battlefield Marine out and a Spec Force Soldier, and then if you're using Power of the Dark Side, you know, you can just go ahead and chuck one of your other guys, right? You have multiple options. So I think that this deck does kind of handle control pretty well. It just struggles against things that kind of ping the units because you're not able to do what the deck wants to do, right? Let's go ahead and hop over to space. We don't have too many space units, but still I think that this is pretty okay, right? We have the Green Squadron A-Wing, still an all-star in space. It's just a 2-drop with Raid 2. It can become a problem for your opponent. Then you have Red 3, it gives all your heroic units Raid. As we know, it just, you know, makes you a little bit stronger if you're swinging into the base. And then we have 2 Wing Leaders. Being able to get Green Squadron A-Wing into Wing Leader for turn 2 to swing in for 5 if you're not playing against control and you know that you have a chance to keep this thing on the board, you can provide massive pressure from space with just Green Squadron A-Wing and Wing Leader, and sometimes that's just enough to win. Now, yes, you can go ahead and throw in Bright Hope, but I chose not to kind of run it in this deck. It might have been a mistake. I've been running back and forth, right? There are a couple things that I think that can go in the deck, like Sabine and Bright Hope, but I like how this deck has been performing, so I kind of went with this build. But again, if you want to add in Bright Hope, nothing wrong with that. If you want to add in Sabine, nothing wrong with that. I just like how this deck is performing at the moment, right? Next, we go into our events. We're running 15 events, and most of them are costing of 1, so it's not too bad. But we have Daring Raid. It's just a good way to deal 2 damage to a base or into a unit. It's also a good way to get rid of shields if they are kind of playing a lot of shields on units and you kind of want to take out some other units. Use this to pop shield, then go ahead and swing into it. But also this with Fighters for Freedom, you're hitting the base for either 3, or you're popping a shield or doing 2 damage to a guy and then still doing 1 damage to the base. I think that combination is what led me to run Fighters for Freedom, and I think that I might want to try to go up to 3, but I need to kind of figure out what I'm going to drop down. But still, Fighters for Freedom with Daring Raid I think is a really good combo. Next, we have Heroic Sacrifice. This card is very good. It adds that card draw that you might desperately need at the end, but so you might fizzle out. Another good thing about the deck is that you don't need to go that much higher than 6 resources, right? Because nothing costs more than 6 resources. So once you get to that 6 resource mark, you're going to be able to draw back up your hand and then kind of play out a bunch of rebels and kind of flood the board there. But this also allows you to power up your unit and then also get that card draw to replace the card in your hand, so you're not losing that card advantage, right? And then obviously you attack with a unit, gets +2/+0 for the phase for this attack, and then it does die if it deals combat damage. But still, this with K2SO, you're swinging, you're blowing up, that could be massive, right? Again, playing this with Fires for Freedom, you're going ahead and you're swinging for 5 Fires for Freedom, but you'll get that 6 damage because you're playing a red card to deal that 1 damage to the base. So there is a lot of, synergy with this deck and this card, and obviously it's pretty good there. Rebel Assault, I like to play this card early. It also, if your opponent's not taking out your rebels, it could be a really good way to end the game, right? You can use Outflank or Rebel Assault. I chose to use Rebel Assault, obviously, because you guys know I'm going to be running for a cause. I try to make sure that every card in this deck, for the most part, is heroic. I am running 2 cards that aren't heroic, but still you have a really good chance to hit on for a cause I believe in. And that's why I went with Rebel Assault over Outflank. Plus, we're in a Rebel-centric deck. Even, it just, at the late game, you might not be able to use this card because you're using Poe and Wrecker, but early game, you're going to have a bunch of Rebels on the board, hopefully, and then you can go ahead and give them +1 and +1, and that's where, you can do 9, 10, 11 damage with just 1 action. It's just really, really strong. So, in the late game, potentially, it could be a dead card, which could be kind of scary, which is why maybe you might want to run Outflank. But again, with the combination of For a Cause and the fact that we have a ton of Rebels, especially early game, I think that Rebel Assault is the way to go. Next, you have Timely Intervention. This card is so good. Being able to have multiple instances of ambush with Poe, with Wrecker, can be a game changer. You can play it with Smuggle as well for 2, or you can play it from your hand for 1, and then go ahead and pop things. It's just really good. And obviously, if you're playing decks like this that have units on attack or on a defeat abilities, playing this card is just really good. And then obviously, as I spoke about before, we have For a Cause I Believe In. For a Cause I Believe In is just really good. Reveal top 4, deal 1 damage to an opponent's base based on how many heroic cards you reveal. Obviously, as you know, we are playing 44 of the 50 cards are heroic, so you have a good chance to hit for 4. And then you may return them in any order or put it into the graveyard or discard pile any way you want. So this is a good way to set your turns up for future plays. And obviously, it's just another way to get damage on the base fast. Even if you don't have any damage, any units on the board, you can still manage to use this and deal damage to your opponent's base. It's just really strong. And then finishing out the deck, we have 2 upgrades. I play Heroic Resolve. Now, this, you can go ahead and you can swap in those Bright Hopes, which, possibly could be the way to go, right? Bright Hope is just really good. You can bring back your fleet lieutenants, use it again, protect yourself in space. That is an option for sure. So Bright Hope might be your way to go. If you want to run Sabine instead of these, you can definitely go ahead and do that. The reason why I'm running Heroic Resolve is because sometimes, again, Sentinels can be a problem. And I do have a couple overwhelm units like Wrecker and like K2SO, but this card allows you to, you get a +1/+1. It's a little bit slow, which kind of stinks, which is why, like, when you end your turn with 1 resource, you can go ahead and just drop this on something if you don't have the initiative, and you can end your turn that way and not feel as bad, right? But being able to spend 2, get +4/+0, and overwhelm for an attack. Yes, you have to defeat the upgrade, but still, that's massive damage, and you can also use it as a way to remove big threats. So I think that it's really strong. Again, if you want to run in Bright Hope, if you want to run in Sabine, totally understandable. I just think that this has worked, and I'm just kind of running it and seeing how I like it, and I think that it's working out so far, so that's why I'm going to keep on playing around with it, right? But Heroic Resolve, I think it's a fun card. It's not as fast as I would like it to be, but still, it's really fun. And that's going to do it for the Han Rebel build, right? We don't have Krayt Dragon, we don't have Ramp. Really, this deck is just about trying to hit the base as quickly as possible using the Rebels, right? And obviously, this is not going to be like the top of the top of the top, right? We have Sabine, anything pretty much, right? Sabine green, Sabine yellow, Sabine blue, all good decks. Boba Fett, every color, good deck. Old Han, green, great deck, right? I'm not saying that this is top of the top, but it still is viable and it is a good option. I have a lot of fun with it. I'm trying to play around with more set 2 decks rather than going back to set 1 leaders over and over again. And I think that this is a fun way to play Han without ramp, right? All right, now hopping into our sideboard, we have Power Failure. Power Failure is just there to go up against those decks that are really upgrade centric. Yes, there are other cards that, you know, might be better in getting rid of upgrades, like even Pose, probably a better choice. But the reason why I went with Power Failure is because with this deck, you can kind of let your opponent put things like, as long as they're like not overly killing all your units, right? You can let them put upgrades onto a couple of units if you have this in hand, and you can focus on their base, and then before they swing into your base, boom, Power Failure, get rid of all their upgrades. Kind of works with Tarkin as well with the EXP tokens and space units. If they're using Lurking TIE Phantom and that's what's getting the EXP tokens, it's a little bit scary because you can't use Power Failure on it, but you can use it on the other ones if it's the TIE Fighter and, you know, the other, like, 7th Fleet Defender and all those cards, right? If those are getting the experience tokens, you use it on that, then all the experience tokens go away, so you don't have to really worry about it too much. But again, it's just a way to get rid of decks that want to focus on getting really big units, right? Using experience tokens or upgrades. You just pop this down, get rid of all those upgrades. We have Spark of Hope. Spark of Hope is if we need the ramp, right? If we need the ramp, we can go ahead and, you know, play this. If you're playing against decks that ping your units, if they ping off a unit and kill it, then you can go ahead and drop this down and you can ramp up and then hopefully get into your bigger units faster to kind of make up for it, right? But still, Spark of Hope, pretty good there. Wolf, obviously, is to stop the control healing, right? For playing against Iden and you are expecting a Vigilance, you can go ahead and drop this down and then you can stop the Vigilance healing for the turn, and maybe that might be enough to kind of keep them at bay. And they'll have to deal with Wolf because it's on attack and on play. So if they don't, then you're going to continue to attack every turn and stop him from being able to use Vigilance or any other methods of healing, right? We have 2 home 1. If you're going into those games that do last a long time, home 1 is pretty good. It has Restore 2 and each friendly unit gets restored. So you're going to potentially be able to live a little bit longer if you can get multiple units to attack and heal up your base as much as possible, right? But also, when played, you can play a heroic unit for your discard pile for the 3 less. Now, what's cool about this is that you can play this for 7, or even if you have 8 resources, you can play this for 7, and then you can go ahead and bring K2SO back from the discard pile, or you can just play it for 7 and get maybe your Psycho-based Defender if you need a Sentinel, right? Or you can go ahead and get a Fleet Lieutenant to use one of your other Rebels to swing and attack. This card is really good if you're going into matches that are lasting a little bit longer, right? And then we have our pet dragon, the krayt dragon. He is at home, which is the sideboard right now. And again, there was a moment where I was going up against control. I put in the krayt dragon, right? Krayt dragon goes in for heroic resolve every time. I feel like that's an easy sideboard if you are going up against control, or, you know, heroic resolve might be able to help you in those matchups because it can deal that extra damage. So you just find another card that you might not need, obviously. But krayt dragon is super strong. Being able to play it down even for 8 resources, still really strong. And then obviously you can go ahead and, you know, make them do damage to their base or to their other units, right? I really do like this deck. I think it has a good amount of speed to it and multiple ways to kind of close out the game as well, with Wrecker being able to use ambush, right? Poe able to use ambush. Multiple times I've finished out games by just using Poe's ability to discard a card and deal 2 damage to a base using ambush, right? This deck just has multiple options to finish out games, which is what I like about it, right? Even if you don't have any units on board, you can go ahead and maybe use your 4 calls I believe in, right? You can go ahead and use Daring Raid. Again, the ambush with Wrecker, being able to pop a resource, deal 5 to a unit, and then swing with overwhelm damage, using that 5 damage to deal massive damage to the opponent's base. It's just, I think it's just good ways to kind of close out games. So again, if you want to try this out, go ahead. Link up for the deck will be down in the description below. And it's might not be as good as these top tier meta decks, but I think it's a lot of fun and you guys should try it out. That being said, we are going to go ahead and hop over into the budget deck for it. Obviously the main deck is about a $370 deck. That for some people might not be the best, right? And that's understandable. $370, not great for a deck. But if you go into the budget side of it, and I think it is just maybe equally as fast, if not a little bit faster, but you have to finish off the game before you get into the big units because there really are no big units in this deck. This deck is a whopping $9, right? So if you want to go ahead and play a cheaper version of Han Rebels, this is the way to go, right? We have, you know, we're adding in Metal Ceremony, Benthic 2 Tubes, Desperate Attack, Green Squadron, Y-Wing, Partisan Insurgent, right? These cheaper common cards and taking out all the rares of the deck. We're also not playing ECL because you might need that extra 5 HP to kind of close out games, right? But the focus of this deck, again, is to use Han's ability to get a bunch of small rebels on the board, because you can use Han's ability. You can get Benthic 2 Tubes and Partisan Insurgent on turn 1, which is a really good way to, you know, potentially threaten a lot of damage on the board, right? If Benthic 2 Tubes is able to attack on turn 2, you can go ahead and then Partisan Insurgent has raid 4. So you're attacking into the base for 7 damage on turn 2, which is kind of fun, right? You have a good mix of space units. You have Green Squadron A-Wing, you have Gray Squadron Y-Wing, and then you have Wing Leader. You can go ahead and pump those units up to make them even more of a threat. You have Bright Hope to bring back Fleet Lieutenant if you need to do so. And again, the biggest unit in this deck is the Guerrilla Attack Pod. Now, when you're using Han's ability on it, it is coming out as a 6-4 rather than a 4-6. Also, it is a Rebel, so you can use Rebel Assault with it. And every card in this deck is a Rebel. So if you have a bunch of units on the board, you can go ahead and drop down Metal Ceremony if you attack with a lot of them, and everything that attack that turn will get +1/+1. And this is just a way cheaper build of the deck. And I still think that it's fun. It does have some speed to it, but it doesn't have those cards like the K2SOs, Wrecker, Poe, and For a Cause. But still, it's a lot of fun. You're just, again, trying to go face as fast as possible with these rebels, and I think there's some good synergy. And I also added Precision Fire in this form of the deck because there are a lot more troopers. And then also, if you use it with Fires of Freedom, yes, it doesn't need to get Saboteur from Precision Fire because it already has Saboteur, but then you're hitting the base for 6 damage just for using Precision Fire because Fires of Freedom is a trooper. So I like that combination. Again, Desperate Attack, because you are going to be damaging your units to get a lot of them on the board. I thought that was a good replacement for Heroic Sacrifice. So again, if you need a more budget friendly version of the deck, here it is. All right, so that's going to do it for the deck list. We're going to go ahead and hop into our matchup. We're going to be going up against a Jabba the Hutt yellow deck. It is trying to stay on theme, right? Jabba the Hutt going after Han Solo, although we're using young Han, so it's not technically super on theme, but we're just going to do Jabba the Hutt against Han Solo. Keep it with it. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the match, and we'll see you guys over there. All right, now we're here against Jabba Yellow. Both decks kind of want to do the same thing, which is just go wide. That's how this Jabba Yellow is built. And so they're, you know, getting their bounty hunters, using things with ambush and things to clear your opponent's side of the board, using Jabba's ability to get the bounty to be able to play out the reputable hunter, maybe a turn early, using the bounty hunter's quarry to get out units from their deck, maybe Boba Fett, stuff like that. So the goal of the Jabba the Hutt deck is to go wide, and the goal of the Rebel Han deck is to go wide as well. So we should have to figure out which deck can go wider, and we'll kind of go from here. So obviously we're picking our resources. I'm getting out some dice here. We're figuring out who gets the initiative. I rolled a 7. That's what that looks like. And then he rolls an 8 here, I believe. And he gets initiative first, which is good, because Han with initiative first is not great for an opponent. So just because I'll be able to guarantee 3 damage right off the bat. He's running 30 HP base, I'm running 25, so that might help him in his favor. And we're gonna kind of see how this one goes. Obviously, we see my hand, we are rocking the no 2-drop, but again, I don't have to worry too much about the pinging. So he sees the crafty smuggler come out, it gets his shield, and he's ready to go. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna literally throw out my red 3, and it's gonna have his 2 damage on it, but still, we get the red 3, so we have our raid on our hero units kind of early. And yeah. All right, we ready it up. We see the 1, and we see the McClunky come out, and he's just gonna go ahead, bring back his crafty smuggler, and bounce out the red 3. So that's one of the things that I have to worry about. Obviously, he has a lot of cheap units. Being able to use McClunky to pop something for 3, basically take it off the board, and out comes crafty smuggler again, and that kind of stings for me. We are going to go ahead and use Han's ability to go ahead and play out our wing leader, and it does die, but it does get this 1 played ability, and we are going to see it get wrecked. But you see the 2 +1/+1s go on to our Spec Force Soldier. So our Spec Force Soldier is going to be our muscle for the time being. We're not going as fast as we wanted to, because again, the cunning decks do have a good matchup against decks like this, because they are able to kind of take out weakened units kind of easily. So we have to kind of try to get around this. You see the Cartel Spacer come out here. He controls a cunning unit, so he does get to exhaust my Spec Force Soldier. We are going with the Green Squadron A-Wing flying in from space. And so we aren't really going necessarily that fast, and that's what kind of sucks here. And you see the McClunky, the Cartel Spacer goes back, and there goes my Green Squadron A-Wing. The Jabba player is doing a really good job at keeping the Han player not being able to get the units onto the board as much as they want. I use the Heroic Sacrifice just to draw a card. You see the Bounty Hunter's quarry go on the Spec Force Soldier, and he's going to go ahead and he's going to deal 2 damage to my base, and he's starting off hitting the base first. So here we are. We're trying to get things going here, and we seem to be having some really bad luck with our draws, right? Off of the Heroic Sacrifice, I drew another Heroic Sacrifice, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. We are going to go ahead and use Han's ability. We're going to wing leader again for 2. We're going to give another +2/+2 to our Spec Force Soldier. It might be a little bit risky depending if he has Waylay in his hand, stuff like that, but we are going to just try to get some big damage in as soon as possible. I knew he had the Cartel Spacer, but you know, it is what it is. I should have probably attacked first, then played wing leader, but this way we do get the initiative next turn. We pop off for 3. The timely intervention is going to stop us from getting the 4, but we do get our first 3 damage onto the board. We are then going to go ahead and put them back in that order. And then, so timely intervention in our hand, giving us another access to the ambush ability, which is really nice. We don't have to use our energy conversion lab right away. We do see the Gamorrean guards. It is not a sentinel yet because there is no command unit on the board, so that's not good for us. He's going to go ahead and shoot us again with the crafty smuggler, and we are going to go ahead and, you know, shoot into the base for 3. I should probably go ahead and try to control his units, but right now we don't have a lot of speed, and if I let Jabba the Hutt get to flip before I have a good amount of damage on the board, it can become a really big problem for me. So we're going to go ahead and resource out that. I'm just kind of looking to see what I do have resourced. And yeah, we resource our timely intervention just because we're going to need to save that potentially for the future. And I kept the heroic sacrifice and the no good to me dead. Now the no good to me dead is to do the damage here. You see the Spets fire spray, right, come out, and it's not ready because there is no no Django on the field, but still, that's very terrifying. We are going to go ahead and see 6 damage come from the Spec Force soldier. He finally gets his time to shine, right? And we're getting close to Jabba territory, which is kind of bad. You see the Gamorrean guard come in there. He shoots me for 3. And we're going to go ahead and hit back for our own 3. And then we see the crafty smuggler hitting me for 2. I am now going to go ahead and play the 4 cause I believe in. I know the top 2 are automatic hits, and then we have the last 2 as hits as well. You see Sabine in there. Obviously, that wasn't in the deck list that I showed. I did end up switching those. Sabine's also good against Jabba the Hutt and other cunning decks because of the fact that you can swing into crafty smuggler, kill the shield first, then go ahead and ping it for 2, take it out. So it is good in this matchup particularly, but I did switch him out for Fighters for Freedom. I do like that card a little bit more than Sabine. But you see that we have pretty good amount of damage now. He is going to potentially flip out the Jabba the Hutt. I am going to go ahead, use Hannonz ability, pay the 2, use Fleet Lieutenant, and I'm going to go ahead and smack for 8. Now, that's pretty big, and that's pretty much what you want to do in this point of the game, because yes, he's starting to flood his board as well, and he was able to consistently get hits on the board, but because I'm using things like Wing Leader and using it with Hannonz ability with Fleet Lieutenant to get that pump, he is going to go ahead and snag the Spec Force soldier, but he did everything he could, and it's going to go into space. Boba Fett captures my Spec Force unit, and he is going to go ahead and get the trigger off of that. It is not a unique unit, so he can only search the top 5, and he's hoping to get something good, and he actually whiffs, which is quite unfortunate and not ideal, obviously, but he now has the Gamorrean guards on the board here, right? And it has Sentinel with the Jabba the Hutt. So I realize that I cannot just freely swing in for game here, so I am going to go ahead and just ambush in. I do not have the ability to discard a card. I will have to use ambush with Poe just to take out the Sentinel. And then I apparently am using dice on Poe here. He does take 3 damage back, and we use ECL. And yeah, and then that's going to leave his base open for the final 3. The thing is that the Rancor doesn't take out Han because it doesn't deal 6 damage, it deals 3. So he's going to go ahead and he's going to put out his Rancor, because either way he goes ahead and he puts out his Rancor, he eats Poe, right? He could have put out the Cartel Spacer, right? And if he did that, it wouldn't have mattered, because then next turn I'm just swinging with Poe. So either way, right? If people say, oh, we could have played Cartel Spacer, if he plays Cartel Spacer, I take the initiative. If I take the initiative, I can swing in, because he had no Sentinels in hand. I could have swung in with Fleet Lieutenant or Poe to go ahead and take that victory. But still, it was close. If he had timely intervention and then he went off and he used the Gamorrean guard, not Gamorrean guard, the Jabba's Rancor with timely intervention, then I get absolutely obliterated because it comes in, it deals 3 damage to Poe, it beats Han, okay, and then all I have is the Fleet Lieutenant, and then I'm in a little bit of a pickle. Then I have to try to draw a Daring Raid or another 4 cards, I believe, which I already used 2 of, and then it gets into that territory where he flips the game right then and there. But because we were able to use that Fleet Lieutenant, a couple of wing leaders to kind of boost up our units and kind of go that route, we are able to, you know, take advantage of our ability with Han and the rebels to make our Spec Force soldier big enough to go ahead and swing into the base for big damage twice. I think he hit for 6 and then 8. So he did most of the work for us, but still good matchup there. But that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys are new here, hit that sub button. Support is always appreciated. If you guys are going to be going to Gen Con, maybe we can meet up somewhere. Like, I'm going to be going to Gen Con, meeting up with people from Fantasy Flight and a few other content creators. And then we're going to, you know, be able to walk around for a couple days. So if you guys are around and you want to say hi, go ahead and do that. Hope to see you guys there. And then also we have a Cad Bane double yellow deck coming out onto the channel soon. So stay tuned for that. If you guys want to play Cad Bane double yellow, is a very fun way to play it. It adds in things like cunning, and you know, you can pop things back with McClunky. You can go ahead and, you know, you can play it a more control-y type of way, or you can go ahead and use it as a more aggro build, because being able to pump up your units with surprise strike and cunning with +4/+0, you can play it multiple different ways. And with the new addition of Triple Dark Raid, being able to get your vehicle units onto the boards a little bit sooner, then pop them back to your hand, and then it's a really good way to play the deck. It might not be as strong as Boba Yellow, but still it's a lot of fun to play. And Cad Bane, in some people's eyes, not really mine, I do like Boba Fett a little bit more than Cad Bane, but Cad Bane is a fan favorite. So if you guys are looking forward to that, stay tuned for that, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.